So we just had a little bit of a mishap trying to record this. Let's get started doing Kashin Koji's analysis here. So again, she's our new 5-star AoE quick SSR assassin here. And I was talking about this before stream, how it's very interesting that essentially we end up having 2 SSR AoE quick assassins that have come out really like in a short succession here, despite not having any for 7 years in the game. So I do think that's going to draw immediate comparisons basically to Huyan Zhou that we basically had coming up from last year's Halloween. Now, again, that being said, let's take a look at her actual kit. It doesn't mean that she's bad in any way, shape, or form here. It just means there's going to be a quick comparison there. Now, again, I do want to take a quick aside here to talk about the fact that I think a lot of people look at quick units as if they're lesser nowadays, as if they're not that good. And I'm just going to, again, really emphasize the need to kind of pay attention to the fact that, look, if quick gets one really good support, that's all it really needs to achieve a renaissance. So don't knock the quick units too hard here. They are not bad by any stretch of the imagination. They just don't have the best system at the moment. And they can certainly get a lot better over time if they actually get proper support. And in some of the cases, some of the quick units just haven't received a lot of love themselves, either in the damage department or maybe like charge or refund departments there. So if they get like one nice upgrade, you can see them sort of come back into prominence. So again, don't worry too much about it. In some cases, the quick units might actually be the best solution for your account given the node. So again, taking a look at Kashin Koji here, she basically ends up having 11.6k attack, and I was pointing this out in the first attempt at recording this as it being not a bad overall attack stat. It's not the best. I think 11.6k would be low for a lot of other SSRs, but keep in mind too that she is an assassin, and assassins do have sort of that malice again to their overall offensive output, so not too terrible. But I think the real concerning issue here is that while her attack isn't the best, her HP is absolutely atrocious. This is one of the lowest stats basically amongst all 5 stars as far as HP goes. So this is not a good scenario to find yourself in if you don't really have the offensive firepower to sort of complement. Now, again, her damage is actually not bad. You'll see it when we start talking about the actual raw numbers, but again, I think this is a really concerning thing that they kind of kept both stats low rather than, you know, jacking one of them up really high and making the other one low. So I do find it odd that they basically did not make her a very thick unit in that regard and didn't give her a little bit more HP to go with. So again, she is Earth attributed here. She has star absorption of 102 and star generation of 25%. Pretty typical. You always have really good star generation if you're an assassin, usually. Again, it does depend on your circumstances. Her NP gain rate here is only 0.5, and a lot of people might look at this as low, but again, she does have stuff in her kit to help compensate for that. But this is always going to be one of our concerns whenever we're dealing with quick units and looping. That, I think, is going to be the issue you're going to run into. Now, again, her death rate's actually fairly high here at 37.1%. Her NP charge defense is at least 1.1 over the average, which is 0.3. So not too bad there either, as long as she's actually getting hit. Now, her alignment is neutral evil. Her gender is unknown. And her basic traits here are demonic, feminine looking, immune to pigify, mechanical, Oni, servant, 7 knight servant, and weak to anima elvish. Sorry, I was coughing there. Her overall deck here is 2A, 2Q. Now, this is an interesting choice. I actually have kind of always preferred double arts in comparison with a quick unit, because that just gives them more cards to generate NP with. But we started to see with Summer Scotty a shift towards more 2Q, 2B type of setups. And those work really good with Summer Scotty because she actually has the ability to boost both quick and buster cards. So cutting down on the arts cards and making them only be one type of card there is not the worst thing in the world there. So she might not be the best pairing in synergy with Summer Scotty, but you're still probably going to want to use Summer Scotty for the overall NP generation that she can give. So I think that's fairly nice. But still, I'm not going to hate on this double arts setup here because I still really kind of like the arts card in terms of overall card performance. Now, looking at her actual hit counts here, they're actually pretty stellar. Both her quick and her arts cards are above average here. A 4-hit arts card, and not just one, but having 2 of them, even with this NP gain right here, is not bad. That's actually going to be really good NP gain. And then a 5-hit quick card is also going to be solid, not just for NP gain for a quick card, but also for star generation purposes, because that's where hit counts really get their bread and butter from. So again, only a 3-hit buster here, but that's not bad either. That's right on average, and so that's a-okay there. And then her extra attack being 5-hit is also perfectly fine. So, looking at her active skills here, you can see, again, she does immediately start out with an invuln, a one-time 3-turn duration invuln. Not bad. I obviously prefer something a little bit beefier than that, especially given her HP value, but at least she actually has a hard survival skill in the kit. Again, this is also going to charge her gauge by 30% and gain her crit stars of 20. So again, a nice crit star bomb there. I think the concerning thing for me, though, as well, is that this is all on a 7-turn cooldown. Again, I don't really like this. I would like this to be on a lower cooldown, but we'll continue to move through the kit here. So looking at her second skill, she increases her own quick performance for 3 turns here by up to 30%. She's also going to increase her own attack for 3 turns by 20% and grant herself on attack activate buff for 3 turns that charges her own NP gauge when normal attacking with quick cards. We've actually seen quite a few skills like this over time, especially with some of the buster units where they just get charged whenever they use one of their cards, particularly even a buster card where you're maybe having to make the choice between using, like, say, an arts card for charge or a buster card for damage. Having a skill like that allowed them to actually get both, and so that was a nice thing. You actually see this with units like basically Muramasa, or even a unit like who's not even truly a buster unit like Galatea. So we've actually kind of seen them add that sort of stuff in there, and so now we have a unit here that's getting it with their quick cards. So that's not a bad thing if you actually end up carding. I think when you look at it from a farming perspective, this seems rather weak because you don't want to have to rely on cards for charge, because you want the charge right on the outset in order to be able to NP that turn, not have to kind of get back to it. And if you're farming, the enemy's probably dead, and so you don't have anyone to card against. But in a challenge scenario, this is definitely nice. This can help the unit get back to their NP when they maybe otherwise wouldn't have enough refund. Maybe they're not facing enough enemies, or maybe the enemy types are just not conducive to it, or maybe they just don't have a whole lot of buffs that would help their NP generation. So this can definitely be a nice thing. I will never knock having this sort of thing, and especially given the fact that it's 3 turns and it's not locked to a number of times, can be nice, because this means you could put her in a solo environment, or you could put her in a card lock environment where she would be able to utilize this over and over and over again. So I think that could be a interesting little aspect to her here. And again, that does scale up with the skill and can be up to 10% per quick card. So not bad. All of this on a 6-turn cooldown. Now, her third skill is an interesting one, and I think you guys are going to see a little bit why here. This is a chance to bound one enemy for 1 turn. If you're unfamiliar with what bound is, it's a unique form of stun, and she's not really the only unit in the game that has it. But basically what this does, it increases the, let's go back to bound right here and just say that it is basically similar to stun, but what it does is it does not end up being, like, impacted by any sort of stun resistance or anything like that. You can still get someone that has, like, magic resistance resisting it, or someone that's debuff immune resisting it, but it means that if someone has specifically, like, stun resistance, it will not be impacted by that. So it can actually still have a decent chance of sort of applying. There's nothing really out there that is specifically bound resistance. So it's sort of a unique, a little bit more powerful version of stun, even though it doesn't actually really translate as much more different. Now, again, this is also going to increase her critical star absorption for 1 turn by 500%. Still nice. Again, you don't need too much really here, especially if your unit is a good star generator. There's going to be stars abound, and so you're going to end up having a lot available to you in order to be able to soak. So having just even a little bit there is going to kind of make it focus on your cards. And that's going to increase her own critical damage for 1 turn by 100%. And so now you can kind of see why with a 100% crit damage modifier, plus start stacking in, like, Scotty crit modifiers and everything like that, there's probably a reason why they kept her attack power low. They're probably worried about the crit scaling way too high, and you can kind of see why. Again, yes, with a unit like this, we've actually seen this, ironically enough, with a 4-star AoE quick assassin, back all the way with Summer Okita, had 100% crit damage in her kit. And she also was full of debilitations and full of things to try and keep her in check, kind of because of that, because her actual crit damage can be really good at times in a Scotty system. So again, this is also on a 7-turn cooldown, so I'm really not in love with the overall kit here or the cooldowns of it. I think it's kind of middling in that sense, but it's not bad. It's not the end of the world here. I just think they could have kind of handled some of this better if they really wanted to sell this unit to you. Now, again, she has Presence Concealment A for an increased 10% critical star generation rate, Mechanical Creation EX, which is her own unique form here, and basically gives her debuff success rate of 6%, so that's going to help out a little bit with that bound application. And then Quick Performance of 6% right there, so a little bit of extra NP damage, card performance, star generation, NP generation, all kind of rolled into that nice little 6% there. And then Mental Modification EX for an additional 10% crit damage, and then debuff resistance of 10% right there. Now, her append skills, you guys know the drill with these. Extra attack finesse, obviously going to be nice for a unit like her that maybe has a little bit more card performance incentives in her kit. And then certainly something like mana loading, you're absolutely going to want if you're going to be trying to 3-turn with her, because you really want all the charge you can with a lot of these quick units, because they are very beholden in most cases to the node being 3 enemy sets. If you don't have 3 enemies in a lot of cases, they're not going to have enough NP gen. And so that's why you started to see a little bit more of an evolution with like Summer Scotty systems and critting, and maybe critting down a wave so that you don't necessarily have to NP every turn. But still, I would highly recommend getting mana loading just to make that easier on yourself in the long run. Her third skill, though, it's interesting, but I'm going to be honest and tell you that this is probably the most worthless one, because it's Anti-Alter Ego attack damage aptitude. This is an assassin. You are not going to want to use her against an alter ego unless she had some sort of special reason to be used. So an example of this would be someone like Kama, who can make herself effective against alter egos and basically resistant to them with one of her skills. She doesn't have this. So I think in this case, you're basically just going to be looking at this like, yeah, no, this is functionally a worthless append, and I don't need to waste the coins on it. So I would highly recommend saving this append for last and only going after this if you're in a completionist mode where you've rolled a lot of copies of her. Now, her Noble Phantasm is actually interesting. It is 8 hit AoE, so that's a really high hit count. And again, you can kind of see when you go high hit count, it's probably going to be why they're going to try to keep the overall NP gain aspect, the raw NP gain stat, in check for a unit. So again, she's going to deal damage to all enemies, and that has a 40% chance to instant kill them. Now, the instant kill is after damage, so that's good. That means it can't impact the actual refund numbers of the unit. So your damage will go out first, and then instant kill has a chance to proc. Not bad. That is the perfect design. That is how you want your unit to function. Now, basically, Fandom has some notes here about the instant kill chance. I actually, again, have talked about this before. I don't really find these to be super useful, and almost a little bit more confusing to a lot of players, because they're trying to almost try to say things like, oh yeah, hey, you would need help to make the unit always be able to succeed with insta-kill. There are some scenarios where you're just not always going to be able to succeed because the rate is artificially suppressed by what you're fighting, particularly servants. So again, I find these notes to actually be unhelpful and a little bit misleading, because they're going to make more and more players confused as to how instant kill works. So again, I'm going to recommend that you actually go watch my video where I explain instant kill. It's part of the Explain series, and kind of get familiar with that and how the formula actually works, that you understand it. Instant kill is a meme, but at the same time, it's not a meme. It can be effective in farming. It's not going to be effective in boss killing, and that's the big thing you guys got to know. So, again, though, she actually has that, so it can be nice. And then, basically, her overcharge effect is quite a bit here. So, she has a chance to bound one enemy for 1 turn. This is different from her overall third skill that she has there. So, she has 2 chances to bound, basically. One with her NP, one with her skill. And so, basically, it's going to deal extra damage to enemies that have bound status. This means that she can get bound off the NP, or she can get bound from the skill. So if you really want extra damage against one unit, you're going to want to save that third skill for that one unit. Okay. But similarly, it's just a chance. So it's a base 60%, and this scales up depending on the actual overcharge. So again, either how much charge you have in their overall gauge or where you put it in a sequence of NPs, or potentially how much buffing of an overcharge buff you've given her. Still, that's going to determine the overall success chance of a bound landing on the enemy. Now, again, this is an overall application here across all of the enemies getting applied, and it's going to deal extra damage to enemies with the bound status. So it deals super effective damage here to any enemy that has bound on it. That's why it's going to be important to actually land the bound there. And again, just the note right there is just kind of talking about that whole thing where bound is this unique thing. It's not quite the exact same thing as stun, but it is basically stun. That's the way to think about it. That's how you're going to operate with it the majority of the time. So again, it's quite interesting. Now, the thing to keep in mind here, because we're going to go look at the NP damage here, is that this assumes the target is bound. This assumes that you actually deal bound damage to the target. So while yes, Kashin does appear at the top of the NP damage list here for our AoE assassins, this is assuming you've landed bound. You have pretty good odds of it given the third skill, especially, but I think the problem is going to be how much damage does Kashin do not to a bound enemy, and it's probably going to be somewhere around the 20k mark instead. So for instance, if you land bound against the one high health enemy, you might be okay there, but what about other enemies basically sitting out there that may or may not be, you know, high HP as well? That would be a concern in this sort of scenario, especially if, you know, maybe you're bound procced on enemy number 1 and then you put the skill on number 1. So then it's just kind of double dipping there, but it's not actually going to deal more damage as a result. So instead, if you got lucky maybe and you put the third skill on like the second unit and then the stun landed on the first unit from the NP, you could get, you know, multiplier damage against both of those. But it really does depend. It's going to be a little bit weird here, but that's kind of the reason that I'm going to tell you. Again, the spreadsheet can be, I'm not going to say misleading, but a little bit like you have to understand how it works, the assumptions that go into it. And the assumption here is that this is the bound super effective damage. So yes, she does have an edge here. Yes, you have a really good shot of landing it, but you may be in a Arjuna Alter type situation where maybe your target is debuff immune and you can't land it no matter what you try. So at that point then, yeah, the damage is probably going to tank. So be a little bit careful with that. But still, yes, that does mean she is very solid damage. And again, the instant kill after damage is not going to impact her overall damage numbers. It just means you have a chance of a get out of jail free proc, basically, where you, even if you didn't do enough damage, maybe you actually instant deathed and killed it. So really nice there. Now, again, I think you're going to start to see a lot of comparisons to other assassins, particularly units like Shootin' or Tezcatlipoca that have come out here recently. And then certainly you're going to see comparisons to Huyan Zhou, again down here at the 24k, but she has evil alignment that she can use to get up to 36k there. And then you also end up having your welfares. And I think this is where the true comparison is going to come in. You have units like Gray that can operate in the Buster system starting from a 60% CE and can still deal crazy amounts of damage nowadays. And then you also end up having sort of your welfare assassins like Kichi Hogan and again Shisho Assassin that basically at NP5 can at least be competitive, particularly Kichi Hogan. Shisho Assassin does need a nice like NP interlude at this point to help her keep pace, but still, I think looking at a unit like Kichi Hogan, if you already have her, you already have pretty much like 90% of what this SSR is going to do for you. So it's up to you to determine whether or not you want to roll. Now, again, it's your prerogative as to whether or not you wish to use your courts on this unit. I'm going to warn you that you do have Ordeal Call coming up on JP, so that's going to be a lot of new units there probably. And you're also heading right smack into anniversary time period and potentially even summer after that. So this is a good time to save your courts. I'm not going to say the unit is bad that you shouldn't roll. I am just going to say choose wisely. Be cautious, be careful, make sure you have a plan, especially those of you on the more free-to-play side. Again, I do think she is a solid unit and she can serve you very well as a very nice AoE assassin, but that is going to be the concern. So, again, She can 3-turn, she can loop. That is something that you'll be fine with in that regard. It's just going to require the proper support setup in order to make work, and hopefully the proper node setup as well. Hopefully that is something that they end up addressing with quick units in the long term by giving them better supports, because quick units do feel especially beholden to the node structure, whereas arch units have a lot of tricks up their sleeve to get out of that, and buster units don't really care what the node structure is. So again, I think that is something that they really need to examine with regards to quick units. But let me know what you guys think of Kashin. How do you like her design? What would you like to see improved about her if you're not okay with her? And again, will you be rolling? I'll be curious to hear your thoughts, and I'll be sure to read the comments below. I will see you guys for the next one. Happy hunting in the lotto, and may the courts be with you.